Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the second half of the first day of the Idaho Rare Plant Conference for 2022. We're going to jump into some more of the Southern Idaho Rare Plant Working Group presentations here. But before I do that, I just want to say that as always, we've got a great representation group here today between agencies and tribes and academics and volunteers and Native Plant Society folks and consultants, and just a really good mix of people on here. And I do appreciate everybody's coming on to the Rare Plant Conference today on this format that's different for all of us. But I'm just so glad that we're all here and we're making good progress. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and jump into Ammannia robusta, unless there's any logistics or questions or details first needed. Are you hearing me?
Yep, we can hear you, and I think we're good on our end. I haven't seen any hands come up, so go for it, Beth.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Ammannia robusta, grand red stem or larger toothcup, which is in the loosestrife family. And this is a new genus to me. Some of you may be familiar with it, but I wasn't. And so anyway, kind of a cool little semi-aquatic thing. And so this is our recommendation from the Rare Plant Working Group is going to be an S1, S2, and to add to the rare plant list. It's not currently on the list. It's currently a G5 state not ranked, so it's fairly widely distributed, but not so much in Idaho. So not on our list and no agency status. Its habitat is mud flats, sand, gravel along rivers, reservoir edges, or alkaline sloughs at relatively low elevation. And there's a picture of it from California. It's an annual little guy, not terribly conspicuous, although the flowers look kind of pretty. Small flowers and fruit in the axils. Globally, it's quite widely distributed across North and South America. But you look at the Bonap map, it's like it's all around us, but not too many records in Idaho. And right now, in addition to the one county that Bonap shows, we know it from up to 7 occurrences in maybe Ada County and Canyon, Oahe, Gem, Nez Perce, and Payette counties. And the records, some of them are quite old and some of them are more recent. So here's a map of where it is. We've got one little disjunct up here on the Clearwater, and then there's a number of them around the Treasure Valley. So it's around on the Snake River and Payette River up here, and then around Lake Lowell, Marsing on the Snake, Hubbard Reservoir, possibly. So kind of scattered around, which is not an unusual type of distribution for aquatic or semi-aquatic plant. Here's the rank calculators that we used, about 1,000 square kilometers and 2 polygons. We put the Clearwater in its own polygon and the rest of the southern Idaho ones in another. So we used a CD factor for that. Area of occupancy, no more than 7 grid cells, and fewer cells. And notice that the range because of the calculated, except that and step by get anyway. So just known in the calculations. I know.
Hey Beth, you're cutting out a bit. Is there anything that you can do for your internet?
Around prior. Oh, I'm just. Yeah, I didn't have any settings or anything, unfortunately. I'll just keep barreling through and hope you can hear me. Threats are high. The private lands are agriculture and development. Water diversion is always a factor. Invasive weeds are a potential. One of the occurrences is near a railroad track and and highway maintenance area, the northern ones, and we don't have any information on trends. Okay, there we go. Okay, so using those factors, the calculated and recommended rank are S1, S2, and based on that, we are recommending to add it to the rare plant list and recommend that at least Fish and Wildlife Service, Deer Flat Refuge manages the special status species. That's one of the places where it's on public land, whatever management they can do. And it'd be good to revisit some of these older occurrence areas. I have to say there's one that's less than a mile from my house, and I haven't got there because I never got the canoe out in the water this year on an island in the Snake River near Marsing. So that's our recommendation. Now, I put a little discussion point in the bottom here, quoting Barbara Erter. There's a quandary of distinguishing between declining natives and sporadic shuffling among wetlands for aquatics in general. And so we, at our working group meeting, we talked about that a bit, but we decided that that's going to be true, of course, of all wetland type species. And of course, of value to consider their current distribution and wetland habitat, whether created or natural or changing, it's still valuable habitat to be managing, looking at. So this is our recommendation. So we're recommending S1, S2 and add it to the INPS rare plant list. Any questions?
Unmute. Hey, we have a question from Angela. Is this species an annual, Beth?
It is, yes, it is an annual. So that's, annual, especially annual aquatics tend to pop up in different places in different years, depending on flooding status and that sort of thing. And so we recognize that. Other questions, comments? Okay, if you are ready to vote, go ahead and vote. Oh, let me stop sharing. Okay. It looks like most people seem to agree with that addition to the rare plant list. So that's what we will go with. Thank you. And now let me go on to my next. Okay, moving on to my next plant. Are you still hearing me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you so far, Beth.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so my next plant is also a potential new add. It's a Carex vernacular rather, which the common name of native sedge or voted, however you say that, sedge, based on an earlier taxonomy of its name. We are recommending S2, S3 rank for this and to add it to the rare plant list. It's also G5 state not ranked, so widely distributed globally, but not so much in Idaho. Not on our list, so no agency status. A rhizomatous perennial with a compact head of androgynous spikes. And its habitat is mostly moist meadows, streams, benches in lodgepole, spruce, or alpine communities on gravel or clay. So high elevation, 9,000 to 10,000, over 10,000 feet in Idaho. It's grows in the western United States, and we're kind of on the edge of it, center edge of it. And at the moment, it is known from 7 occurrences in custom counties that are between 7 and 2010. And here's the map of its range. And so it's distributed around through high elevation areas in central Idaho. And I didn't go over this on this one. We talked about this at the Rare Plant Working Group quite a bit, but this came to our attention because Don Mansfield and Ben Legler and some others have been looking at Carexes in detail. And this is one that kind of floated out to the top that is not on our list, but it turns out there's very few records of it. So that's why we're looking at it now. Okay, so we used a range extent of 86 square miles in 5 polygons. We actually kind of, rather than drawing one big range extent, we did break it up. So we used B for that. Area of occupancy is there 7 squares. You'll notice that if we don't have any information indicating that an occurrence is a large occurrence that covers more than, say, a section, and we generally use 1 grid cell per occurrence, because most of these occurrences are small in area. So that's kind of been our rule of thumb. Anyway, so 7 grid cells, 7 occurrences. We don't know what the population sizes are. Good viability are going to be no more than 7. Threats are medium low at this high elevation, but climate change is possible. There's possibly roads on some that are not within wilderness areas, but the Targhee National Forest site is within an RNA, so at least one has some protection there, and the trends are unknown. So that results in a calculated and recommended rank of S2, S3, and we are recommending to add it to the list as rare, and recommend that the national forest where it occurs, Chalice, Sawtooth, and Targhee, manage it as a special status plant. Any questions on Carex vernacula? And if you ask me how to tell it from the others, I will refer to Dawn and Ben, because it's a Carex in the ovales. Okay, any questions? Okay, let's go ahead and vote on that then. We are voting for to add it to the rare plant list as an S2, S3. Okay, great. Thank you very much. That looks good. And Carol is up next to tell us about some Phacelia. Oh, I see Angela, before I leave it to Carol, I see Angela asks about the standard approach to polyon designation, and we've had lots and lots of discussions about this. And NatureServe really recommends using 1 polygon for the state, but we have decided in some cases where the habitat is just so disjunct that we would use multiple polygons. That's the short answer. We've had lots of discussions about that. Thanks, Angela, for asking that. Okay, Carol.
Okay, who has my presentation?
Let me get you loaded here.
Perfect.
At the bottom, the little.
All right. So this is Phacelia scopulina, variety scopulina. It used to be Phacelia lutea, and we'll talk about that in my next species. And we're recommending S1 and add it to the rare plant list. So next slide. So it, like I said, it used to be part of lutea, but it's now its own species, and it's currently G4, TNR, and SNR, state not ranked, and it's not on the INPS list. And you tell it from Phacelia lutea based on hairiness, and it is hairy, but it also has, the leaves have dentations, whereas the other two species don't have, they have entire leaves. So next one. So the distribution is all around Idaho. Big smiley face, and none of them in Idaho. And the next one. So we have 4 collections from Idaho. 2 of them are rather historic. One by Baker near Grasmere, Bratz in Reynolds Creek, and then I found one Salmon Falls Creek, and Mancuso found one in Cache County. So that makes a almost symmetrical range there of 4,135 miles, which we obviously need to get to work on and fill it in. So the next one. So the habitat is, well, at least in Oregon, we know that it's ash. And other than the 4 collections we have, we really don't know a lot about the habitat, but we assume it's the same thing. And the threats are high. There's invasive species, vehicle impacts, livestock trampling, and potential mining on white ash habitat. The next one. So we have a large range extent, which equals E. And then we have 4 kilometer squared grid squares, which equals C. 4 occurrences, some are very old. Population is unknown. Occurrences with good viability is really unknown, and the threats are high. So next one. So it calculates out as an S1, and we recommend adding to the rare plant list and BLM special status. And we recommend surveying the previous sites and other potential habitat. And this ranking would also apply to the species since it's the only variety in Idaho. So questions?
Thank you, Carol. So this would be a new add to our list, a little annual Phacelia. Good one to look for in a good precipitation year, which we haven't had for a while, but we have hopes. So if there's no further questions, let's go ahead and vote on adding Phacelia scopulina, variety scopulina, as an S1 to the rare plant list.
Just had a question, Carol, this is Gillian, and you mentioned that the ranking would also apply to scopulina, and can you do you know what the range of that is? I'm just curious. I don't have my Pacific Northwest herbaria up or anything.
I don't know what it is outside of Idaho, but I know this is all there is in Idaho.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Carol, this is Lynn. Should we add, is there a threat from recreational activities like OHVs at all? Should we add that to the threats or not?
I would think, yes, I would think so.
Okay, because I noticed okay, I'll add that. Thanks.
Good idea.
Yeah, and back to Gillian's question is that the map you showed was for scopulina, and then the only other variety of this is in Colorado. It's much more limited in Colorado. So, yeah.
Thanks, Beth.
Okay, good. Any more questions, comments? Okay, looks like we're good with S1 add. And adding recreation to the threats. Great. Thanks, Carol. Now you want to move on to your next Phacelia.
All right. So this is Phacelia lutea variety calva, the yellow scorpion weed. And we're recommending S2 from an S3 and maintain as rare. So we can go to the next one. So a little review here. The variety calva is glabrous, and the variety lutea is hairy. So you need to take your loop with you when you're going out to determine which one this is. Okay, the next one. And here's the habitat, and you can see the associated species. It's a peculiar one. Okay, next slide. Nature Serve shows it in different states. And it's all basically in the same area. The corner of Idaho and the corner of Oregon and the northwestern part of Nevada. So next. The interesting part is you see Highway 95 goes down there and goes over the orange color, the TMS, and that is the Sucker Creek Formation. And go to the next slide. That pretty much that polygon is Sucker Creek Formation, and you can see Highway 95 going through it. So this is the extent of the populations in Idaho. And the yellow circles are EOs, the green dots are herbarium specimens, and the orange dots are variety calva herbarium specimens. And the green dots are variety lutea. So I can't read on my screen. Let me see. Okay, the area of occupancy is 21 grid cells, and the range is 66.6 square miles. So, I'm sorry, what was the question? That is pretty much, yeah, that is pretty much the Sucker Creek Formation in Idaho. I'm sure you'll find little outcrops. That map is not as detailed as we do our mapping. So you will find outcrops, but that's pretty much it. Okay, next slide. So here's our ranking factors. The occurrences are 18, which equals B. The range extent is a BC. The area of occupancy is 22 grid squares, which is a D. We estimate about 20,000, but it's an annual, so that's really not too valuable. Some of the populations are viable. So 4 to 12 equals a C. The threats are high with mining. One EO has been mined out. There's OHVs running across it, livestock trampling, invasive weeds, and maybe the soda fire took out some. Oh, the unverified outliers. Let's go back to the polygon map. There's some out here to the right, the green dots, and those are collections that were initially determined to be our species, but they need to be looked at and really verified. They're probably the lutea. And then we had another question. What is the general date of bloom? Good question. Beth, can you help me on that?
It blooms in early, is that what you're asking, blooming time?
I believe
Yes,
so.
it's early summer. And so, yeah, May, sometime, I don't think this one you'll see it in April, but I think May is a good time to see this one. Sometimes into June.
And hopefully you'll have a wet spring. Okay.
And
One more question for you, Carol. What about the orange dots representing herbarium specimens?
Those haven't been looked at to develop an EO, a formal write-up yet.
So were they considered in the rank calculator as variety calva?
Yes. All those collections are validated in the herbarium, all those herbarium records.
I think half the confusion is this is the state line. The state line runs through the center of that. So the orange dots on the left hand of that picture are in Oregon. So they weren't considered in our S ranking.
Yeah, but there's several orange dots intermixed within the blue polygon with the yellow dots, and I wasn't sure what the distinction was.
Those
Okay,
are
yeah.
Those are herbarium specimens, and apparently no one has yet gone to evaluate those populations. So they're not really EOs, they're specimens in the record.
Well, okay, let me clarify on that. So the IFWIS had a number of EO records, and then Carol looked at also the herbarium records, and we found other collections that had not been given an EO record yet. We did count those that were not, that were, farther away from existing EOs in the number of EOs.
We did, yes.
Don't herbarium records count as EOs?
Well, they
They
could. But in this case, we're differentiating, excuse me, differentiating EOs that have actually been evaluated in the past from herbarium collections that are just standing alone.
How do you treat those, Lynn?
We would, if I was evaluating a species, I would calculate the herbarium records that were farther than a kilometer from a known EO. I would calculate those as a separate occurrence.
That's what I thought. Okay.
So we'd have, for
Yeah,
example, we might have 10 EOs from IFWIS, and we might have 5 herbarium records that weren't very near those known EOs. And so we would count 15. We'd put 15 into the rank calculator.
I get it. Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, and that's what
kind of
we did. But the map just shows the EO versus the collection. Yeah, we did incorporate all those.
So to get to our total of 18 EOs, we did count the further out collections, herbarium collections, as an EO.
Yes. Okay, keep going on your slides.
I think I've been through them all because we backed up to this one. Oh, there we are. Okay, so the calculator came out with S2, and we recommend maintain as rare and BLM special status.
Okay, good questions there. And one point I want to make about this one is one that's been on the list for a long time. And I think people have considered, oh, there's a lot of it out there, we don't need to worry about it. And it's true on a good year in the past, you can find a lot of it on these ash outcrops. But A, we haven't had so many good years, and B, the weeds come in, the soda fire came through, mining has come through, there's been a lot of impacts in that very limited area. And so that's the main reason that we're looking at recommending an S2 on this one.
And I'll add, we don't really know anything about the seed longevity in the soil bank. I mean, how many years does it last if we have an extended drought? I don't think we know.
So we did go out last year and look for it. And of course, I found one mustard annual. That was the only annual I saw. So it was a bad year for it.
Yeah. Any more questions, comments? Oh, I see Jay Weaver says he's found it on the training area. And okay, Jay, do you have a specimen to verify with that? Because we'd be looking for that. But yes, definitely contact Carol afterwards. That'd be great. Okay, so everybody ready to vote? Go ahead and vote then on this one. Great, thank you. Okay, I believe looks good. Okay.
You want to get feedback on that?
Hey, Beth, we had one no from Angela. I'm not sure if she wanted to provide any additional feedback or anything like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Angela, do you have other comments that you want to talk about on that?
Well, it just seems like maybe there's some incomplete information on this one, especially where Jay is saying he's found it. We don't know how big, how many, if that extends the range, if that would affect the rank calculator. And being that it's an annual, this last year was a terrible year to look for any annuals. So I'm not sure how much weight you can put in on survey efforts in really droughty years. Now that may become more the norm, but we don't really know at this point. So it just seems like there's maybe some incomplete information on this one.
You're right that this is a bad year for annuals, and we're certainly not basing our total viability on what we saw this year. that would be very depressing. But yeah, as far as the potential new record, we will look at that and try to verify that and see if it is actually this variety, and see if it does extend that. And if so, we would come back next year or next time with updated information, because that's how this works. It's an iterative process. We've seen that, with species. And but the information that we have, verified information that we have in hand right now suggests an S2. And so that's what we're recommending right now.
This is Lynn. I should add to the rank calculator perhaps the note about, or should I add it there, or should it be in the species account about Jay having possibly a location on the OTA?
Yeah, this is, we'll go to scribe notes, and then so we'll follow up from there. So
okay, in the scribe notes, so not in the rank calculator. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's what we should do with it, and then we'll of course follow up on that. Thank you, Jay, for that information. Okay. Any other questions, discussions? No. Okay, thank you very much. We will go with an S2 on the majority rule. And it's still, you know, it's maintained on the rare plant list, whether it's an S3 or S2. We just thought we needed to highlight its increased threats in its area. Good. Okay, Sandy Smith will be up next with Pyrrocoma racemosa, variety paniculata.
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so Brittni, I need you to go ahead and run mine.
Copy. Okay, ready when you are.
Okay, so the Pyrrocoma racemosa paniculata is one I've been looking at for a couple of years. And at first I thought we were going to be going with a state historical, but we did have one area where, possibly two, where we may have some populations. We need people's eyes out for it. And at this point, we're going to say that those are valid spots. So we're saying an S1. And so we'll go ahead and run through the next slide. So it's not listed in any of the agencies as one to consider. This is the only variety of Pyrrocoma racemosa that is in the state of Idaho. It's usually in alkaline flats, low elevation or lower elevation saline meadows in the sagebrush steppe, but the alkalinity of the soil is really key here. Next. So this is a photo of it. It's got a very tightly held flower on the stem coming up. Next. So in Idaho, we had 5 collections from 4 different sites. Most of those were fairly old. And 3 of them were at the University of Washington, 1 at the Botanical Garden in New York, and 1 at BYU. The last collection was made in 1982. The prior ones were from 1952 or earlier. And so we'll go to the next slide. So this shows the counties that come up on BONAP, but I'm not sure where all these counties come from, where that information was from, because there's no records showing most of these counties. The only counties that we actually have herbarium records are Gem County, Cassia County, and Caribou County. Next. So of those sites, we had 6 collections total with 5 sites. None of them were actually evaluated as EOs. 2 of the collections were incorrectly identified. One of the sites was over by Emmett in Gem County. That whole area has gone to agriculture, and the description was really difficult to relocate because it said 12 miles west of Emmett, and that's the total description. But that agricultural ground takes in, and it's a private ground, takes in most of the potential site area for that one. I'm expecting that is extirpated at this point. I did visit the Idaho home site. That whole area has been converted to crested wheat, and looked through the site, had a pretty good description of where to look, and couldn't find anything there. And it was not this last year, but the year before, so at least there was a better chance of finding things. But I think that one is also extirpated. The Hooper Springs site is just north of Soda Springs. Much of that site has been converted to lawn since the collection was made in 1952. There is a little bit of habitat that potentially could have some material, but when I checked the site, I couldn't find it. So that one's still a very much of an iffy one, but I'm not going to completely rule it out. The most recent site is by Anderson Reservoir, just near Soda Springs. That population has not been relocated, but the collection was made in '82. There's a good chance that that area could have the material still in it. So I'm going to say that that's an extant population until we verify that it isn't. And so at this point, we're recommending, instead of an SH, which I initially thought we were going to be with, I recommend an S1. And then anybody who's out in that area around Anderson Reservoir, if they could keep an eye out for this, it would be great. And I think that's the last slide. No, it isn't. Okay, so this shows those initial. This is the one that's by Emmett. This is the one by Idaho that appears extirpated. And then the more recent collection here, and this area also takes in the Hooper Springs. They're very close together. It may be, you may be right, it may be Alexander.
Yeah, it's Alexander Reservoir. I was going to mention that.
Yeah, my mistake.
You've got a question from Dawn, Sandy.
Okay.
Sandy, I'm just wondering what, or maybe not to you, maybe I'm not sure who to address this, but what defines historical? When we talk about state historical, is it like 50 years, 70 years? Is there a standard definition for when something moves to being historical?
I believe that that is more of the fact that we've got vouchers that are valid, but those sites can't be refound, and we have no more current vouchers that have shown up.
So is that the standard NatureServe definition, or is this an Idaho definition, just out of curiosity? Because if the collection was made in '82 versus '52 versus 1912, does it matter? I mean, if you can't relocate it, in 100 years, presumably you'd go down as state historical. But if you haven't, well, just curious. I don't know. I'm just asking in general.
There is the NatureServe definition on that, which I don't have immediately available. I know before my time is historical, but my time can't be historical. So yeah, anything anything past the 80s it seems to me like there's, we have a hope of finding again.
We
Lynn, go
said
ahead.
the NatureServe, I think the NatureServe definition was more than 40 years old. And of course, we know we're not going back to every one of these when we don't have the money or time to do that. We don't have the means to do that necessarily. So we have to go on the most recent record we have. And if we only have records that are more than 40 years old, then we've gone with SH. Unless
Thank you.
Something.
I get it. Thanks.
And we have a comment from Michael Mancuso that 12 miles west of Emmett may include some BLM land that may not have been converted to ag.
Yeah, that's a good point. So we still could possibly find it out there. And so you'll notice in the range extent here, we did use a range of range extents from the, including the historic would be the E, and using just the more recent would be the A. But it ranks out S1 in any case. Okay, let's see, Sandy, I don't know, did you go through these already?
Okay, so no. So yeah, we've got the range extent is 8E for the whole range going across from one edge of the state to the other. We have 1 or 2 grid cells depending on those occurrences. If we can find them, the most we would have is probably 2, but maybe we could find the one by Emmett. I don't know. We'll have to go look some more. Population levels are unknown at this point. And probably the only one with good viability would be the most recent, just because nobody's seen the other ones to make a collection since 1952. And for the one over by Emmett, that was in 1937. So threat factors are mostly site conversion, weeds. Along the reservoir, there may be recreation as well that could be making an impact. It calculated out as an S1. And next slide. And so that's what we're suggesting, is going with an S1 and do some continuing to try and do some field work to see if those populations around Alexander Reservoir and Hooper Springs, as well as Emmett, are still extant.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. Any more questions or comments? Okay, given our current information on this one, we're recommending again S1 and moving from review to rare. So go ahead and vote on that if you would. Good. Okay, looks like we're seeing most people voting. Thank you. Okay, now we have to our last one on the agenda, and then we will have time to get to some of our extra ones, so that's good. Up next is Ben Legler with another Carex and another holmgreniorum. We have kind of a theme here at this Rare Plant Conference. So Ben, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Brittni, can you do the slide share and I'll just have you move along?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm going to look at Carex holmgreniorum. This is a species that was published in 2013 as a new species. It has not been previously on the rare plant list for Idaho or NatureServe. And together with the Southern Idaho Rare Plant Working Group, our recommendation is to add it as S1 for Idaho. One of the perks of being able to do Rare Plant Working Group meetings by Zoom is that I was able to join the Southern Idaho group after uncovering the species to review it with them, since this is a Southern Idaho species. I came across this in a rather roundabout way. I was asked by Walt Fertig with the Washington Natural Heritage Program to check the ID of a species of Carex perriana from northern Washington at the University of Idaho, and turned out that specimen was correctly identified, and he added that species to the rare plant list for Washington. But in the process of trying to get a handle on that species, I had to look at the species complex as a whole, and uncovered several of the specimens at the University of Idaho that were misidentified, including one collection from Southern Idaho that turned out to be Carex holmgreniorum. Okay, next slide. So the publication in 2013 was by Tony Resnicek and David Murray. They reviewed the Carex periana species complex, which was in the past treated very broadly, either as a single species or as a species with several varieties. And based on their review, they split it up into 6 different species. It has a distribution pretty broadly across Western North America and the Intermountain region. Of those 6 species, 3 of those occur in Idaho. The others are more southern or eastern. So next slide. So the 3 that occur in Idaho are Carex holmgreniorum, Carex idahoa, and Carex periana. And I've shown representative inflorescences of those 3 species here, which contain the diagnostic characters separating them. And if you have good examples like this, and you can compare them, it's pretty easy to tell which one you're going in, at least relative to Carex in general. Carex holmgreniorum on the left side has larger perigynia and pistillate scales, so the spikelets look fat and short. Carex periana on the right side is the most similar to that, but the scales and the perigynia are much smaller and narrower. Carex idaho in the middle has very dark scales, which gives the inflorescence a blackish appearance to it. Okay, next slide. So the distribution of Carex holmgreniorum is primarily in the Great Basin region of Nevada, in the central part of the state. There are also a cluster of sites from southern Utah, and then one from northern Utah and one from southern Idaho, southeast Idaho. And on the map, those are the green dots that you can see against the background. This is data from iDigBio, which is the national level portal is aggregating herbarium specimens. And I pulled data from that because this species being newly published is not in Florida, North America. It's not in Intermountain Flora. It's not in BONAP or anything as far as I know. So this was the most complete information I could find on the overall distribution, and this matches the publication of the species. Habitat is alkaline seeps or springs, oftentimes in where it's calcareous or saline soils, so low elevations. And that includes the site from southeast Idaho. Okay, next slide. The one occurrence I found from Idaho at the Stilling Herbarium at the University of Idaho is this specimen shown here. It was originally identified as Carex periana. And I think that was, yeah, Bob Mosley collected that. At the bottom of my screen is cut off a little bit. So he identified as Carex periana, which at the time would have been the appropriate name to put it under. As I was reviewing the species complex, I noticed in the paper that they cited a duplicate of a specimen of Carex holmgreniorum at the University of Idaho. So I found that specimen, which is shown here. Checked the identification, it matches perfectly to that species description in their paper. So I went ahead and annotated it accordingly to give us our one record from Idaho. Okay, next slide. So location in Idaho, we're going back to Soda Springs, back to the Alexander Reservoir again, as with Pyrrocoma. And that one collection comes from an area just on the outskirts of the town of Soda Springs, in a place called the Soda Springs Natural Scenic Area, which I believe is, at least at the time, was Idaho Transportation Department lands. I believe it still is. And that's on the south side of the highway between Highway 30 and the Alexander Reservoir. So on the next slide, we can zoom in on that a little bit. So this is the area where it was collected. That little yellow or white dot with the red circle in the middle is the georeference that we've assigned to this specimen, because it didn't have a lat long coordinate to begin with. And the bigger red circle is just our uncertainty around that encompasses the possible area it could have been collected. But basically that area south of Highway 30 and north of the reservoir, where you see those outcrops of whitish soil, that's the possible location where the specimen would have been collected. This is an area of CP areas and travertine deposits on the north shore of the reservoir. And based on the habitat description that Mosley included with this specimen, it looks like this specimen was collected from those travertine deposits at the site. You can see, looking at this, that there are some disturbance scars running through the site between the highway and the reservoir. possibly gas pipelines or old tracks where vehicles have been run. So it's not a particularly pristine site. Okay, next slide. So looking at the ranking factors, we have one occurrence in Idaho. So one option is just to do a square kilometer grid cell around that, or we can draw a bigger polygon that includes the occurrences in Nevada and Utah, and then cut that off of the Idaho state line, which gives us a range extent of 3,836 square kilometers in Idaho. It turns out that either way, it doesn't affect the outcome of the ranking calculator. Okay, next slide. So going through the ranking calculator factors, the range extent is either small, less than 100 square kilometers, or in that 1,000 to 5,000 square kilometer bin. We have 1 4 kilometer square grid cell as the area of occupancy in Idaho. Only one occurrence based on that one specimen. And I should note that after going through all the specimens, herbarium specimens that I could find of the Carex species complex, I couldn't uncover anything else of this species from Idaho. And the publication by Rezenchuk and Murray also only cited one occurrence from Idaho. So it's unlikely to be more common in the state than just this one occurrence indicates. Population size is unknown. All we have to go on is that specimen label. I'm assuming it's low in the range of a couple hundred a couple hundred plants at the site. Viability is unknown because nobody has yet made it back to the location to see what it looks like on the ground right now. Originally, because I'm not familiar with Soda Springs, I had the threat impact is unknown, but after review with the Southern Idaho group, we put that as high based on the potential for disturbance and other issues at the site. So we included threat factors such as hydrology changes caused by water diversion. There are ditches in the area upslope from it. Climate change could dry things out. Habitat loss from disturbing or grazing since it's near developed areas, invasive weeds, of course, and then potential recreational vehicle traffic along the reservoir edge or along the land itself. So putting all those together, we came up with a calculated rank of S1, which makes sense for a single occurrence in the state. Next slide. So that's what we recommend, is adding it to the rare plant list for Idaho as S1. And a couple corollary recommendations is that if possible, it'd be good to revisit the Soda Springs site and determine if the species is still extant there and how much of it's there, since we're going on 28, 29 years since Mosley collected it. And then also survey other alkaline seeps or travertine deposits in that area around Soda Springs. There are some other sites in that local area where the habitat could allow the species to occur. But more broadly in Idaho, I don't expect there's a lot of habitat for this species. Okay, so that's what I have. Add it as S1 to the rare plant list. All right, I'll turn it back to you, Beth.
Great, thank you, Ben. So this is an interesting one, and notice that, you know, the thing that pops to my mind is road trip. We need to go look at these areas for both the Pyrrocoma and the Carex and whatever else is out in these areas. So I highly encourage those of you who get into Southeast Idaho and elsewhere, into places like this, to keep an eye out for plants like this. This is kind of one of the points of the Rare Plant Conference, to get these in our collective consciousness to look for. So yes, I see we had a question in the chat about whether the possibility that was transported to this location on equipment or vehicles. I don't know, Ben, do you want to comment anything on that?
I suppose it's possible. It seems unlikely given the scattered populations and that the other populations are pretty far to the south in Nevada and southern Utah, other than that one site in northern Utah. So yeah, it's possible, but I don't see any reason to expect that.
Okay. Yeah, so as far as we know, this is a native population and not a waif. So it's a good point. Dawn, did you have a question? Don's hands up, but he's muted. But Mike Mancuso says he drove by the site last summer and it is still intact. Well, that's good to know. So that's again, we need to go out and revisit to see if we can find these plants. Dawn, go ahead.
Two questions. The first is, I noticed in the abstract that it says that Carex aboriginum of older literature is what they resurrected as Carex holmgreniorum. Can you comment on that, Ben?
Sure. So Carex aboriginum, the name, has been published twice by different authors. So they're homonyms. The Carex aboriginum referenced in the paper is a synonym of Carex holmgreniorum. The other Carex aboriginum, I believe, is that local endemic from, is it the Bear River Valley area of Idaho, if I recall?
No, it's up in Adams County, right?
Okay.
Brittni? Yeah.
Yeah, and that one's a completely separate species and section.
Got it. I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Second question I had was, I wondered if Bob Mosley had any recollections to share since he's here about that.
Yeah, so hello, everybody. I was trying to, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I was trying to recollect as Ben was going through this. So like Michael, I drove by that spot on the highway last summer also on the way back from Wyoming, and it's still intact. The groundwater that surfaces there is highly, full of travertine. It's old water from deep in those phosphate field kind of mountains. And that seepage area extends to the north side of the road, and that's all private land. The only spot that is public that what's identified as Department of Transportation land is between the highway and the reservoir. But yeah, it looked still intact, didn't stop. But I have over the years been around those other travertine deposits around Soda Springs formation in those places. Didn't collect plants probably as extensively as I did at this spot along the highway, but yeah, definitely worth revisiting those for things like Pyrrocoma racemosa. I mean, when Alexander Reservoir pops up 2 times in the last hour, that sounds like a place to go looking for stuff. I guess that's, yeah.
Right. Yeah, thanks, Bob. And yeah, that does reiterate the point. This looks like a hot spot to go be looking for in that general area. Great.
The travertine is extraordinary there. Just go visit Formation Springs if you can. It's really extraordinary. And the fact that Pinus flexilis, which isn't anywhere out in that valley in any other place, is pretty common in this wetland. Yeah, along with Rocky Mountain juniper, is pretty strange.
Bob, this is a long shot. Do you have any recollection of how common that Carex might have been? The Soda Springs site?
I have no recollection of actually even collecting it. So I must have been bailing plants.
We understand.
Yeah, it was a lot of species ago.
Yeah.
Cool. That's great.
Thank you. Okay, Derek's hands up. Derek, go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering if that same species complex had been looked at the other Idaho herbaria. And if not, maybe we need to add that as a recommendation, see if there's other examples of this or other of those species.
Yeah, so I examined all the specimens at the University of Idaho physically, since that's where I was. And then I looked at images of specimens from all the other Idaho herbaria, since they're all imaged at this point. And the inflorescences are distinctive enough that you could put a tentative ID on it based on an image. And I could not find anything at the other herbaria in Idaho that had a specimen look like Carex holmgreniorum.
Okay, sounds like we don't need that recommendation then. It's already been done. Thanks.
I think we did talk about looking at some of the other species in that complex for our next look, but we started with the holmgreniorum on this one. So good point. Any more questions or comments? Okay, let's go ahead and vote on adding Carex holmgreniorum as an S1 to the rare plant list. Please register your opinion. Great. This looks like a good ad, so we're good with this. Thank you, everybody. Okay, now we're gonna go beyond the agenda now. And up next is Jennifer Miller is going to talk to us about Phagogenes serpulloides.
Yeah, can Brittni bring up my slideshow, please?
I can. Give me just a second and I'll have it up.
Thank you. Okay, I am presenting Phagogenes serpulloides, also known as time leaf mesomet, and we are recommending it a rank of S1. Next. This species was formerly known as Phagogenes floribunda in Idaho, but after a study in 2013, it was changed to serpulloides. Actually, this is my old PowerPoint. I updated one, so I'm a little off here. But NatureServe has it as a G5 S1. IMPS current status is a GP3, and has no status for Forest Service, BLM, or Fish and Wildlife Service. It's a little annual forb with lavender to purple or white flowers in the mint family, and you'll probably smell it before you see it. Next slide. It grows in vernally wet habitats. So on the left side of the screen is the occurrence south of Boise, and in the lower right, the photo is from our second occurrence in Hawaii County, north of Riddle. So next slide, please. It's known from California, Idaho, and Oregon. Southwest Idaho is the northeastern extent of its range. Like I said, we have two occurrences. EO1 was discovered in 2000 in Ada County. It's south of 10 Mile Creek on BLM land. And EO2 was discovered in 2009 in Hawaii County, north of Riddle on state land. Next slide, please. So the ranking factors, the range extent is A, less than 100 square kilometers. The area of occupancy is a B. The number of occurrences is 2. And for the population size, it's less than 50 plants, which was found at EO2 in 2009. I will say that in 2020, Lynn Kenter, Beth Corbin, and DeBolt and myself went out to EO1 and could not relocate that population. And then in 2021, Beth, Lynn, and I went back out to EO1 and visited EO2, and we couldn't find either population. And yes, we know it was a drought year. So the overall threat impact calculated out as very high, and those factors included livestock grazing and trampling, non-native species, trash, 2 tracks, recreational activities, drought, and herbivory by Mormon crickets. So the calculated rank did come out as an S1. Next slide, please. So we're going to recommend that we change the name, or actually remove floribunda from the rare plant list and add serpulloides. We want to maintain it as rare, and the species needs to be added to the BLM special status list, and then to continue inventories. Hopefully years to come will be wetter. So that's all I have.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. this was a fun, treasure hunt one where the hunt will continue because,
Yes.
as Jennifer said, that, there still exists habitat both of the places we went, but we just didn't find any plants. And but we're certainly not giving up hope. We're hoping for a good year and good plants at some point. But they definitely are high threats. Questions, comments, discussion on Pagogeny serpulloides, which will be replacing what is currently on the list as Pagogeny floribunda.
Correct.
Seeing no questions, it's not too late, but not seeing any, go ahead and vote for an S1 rare different name for this Pagogeny. Excellent. Looks like most people agree with that. So good. And again, this is one to keep an eye out for and a nose out for. Sometimes you can smell it before you see it when you step on it. So, okay. Thank you, everybody, for that. Next up is Carol Prentice is going to talk to us about Astragalus bodinii. So Brittni, I think you have her presentation.
I do.
Good. I just want it noted that the snacks at this meeting are not as good as last year.
We'll try harder next year for good snacks.
Okay, for the for the life of me, I can't remember how I stumbled on this species, but we're recommending that it be added to as state historical to the rare plant list. So next slide. So this species is really widespread and it's peripheral in Idaho, and it's currently a G4 state not ranked. And it's not currently on the Idaho Rare Plant List and has no agency status. And as you can see from the map, it doesn't even show it as being in Idaho. Next slide. So we have one historic record by Avon Nelson at Mackay, Idaho. And we had two records. One was by Erder, and of course this one by Avon. I thought, oh, that's really good. Well, unfortunately, Barbara's was, it was identified by Barnaby, but then he changed his mind. So that one went away. So we have this one from Mackay, and Barbara kept encouraging us to look at the only collection we knew of was in Washington State. So Barbara kept encouraging me to go to Avon Nelson's herbarium and have it looked at there. And so it was looked at, and next slide. So Ben looked at it and he said, oh yes, this is bodinii. And so we do have a collection from Idaho. Now it's listed in the Flora of the Pacific Northwest, and it's also listed in the new one. So it was there for sure. And it's on down in Wet Meadow, out of Mackay there, on probably what is now private land. Next slide. So we just have the one location and just one grid cell, one occurrence, population unknown. It has a very narrow habitat specificity. It loves calcium. It's mesic. We don't know its viability. We assume that threats are high with grazing, trampling, agricultural use. So it comes out S1, and we recommend an SH for state historical. Next slide. So we recommend state historical, add to the rare plant list, and search for it wherever we can find some habitat. And as a footnote, I just add, we have 9 Astragalus species in Idaho Rare, and most of them are not well collected. So it's something to look for in mesic habitat. Questions?
Okay, thank you, Carol. This is an interesting, again, a treasure hunt one that's definitely worth looking for. If you're on any calcic, mesic, grassy bottoms area, especially on public land, or if you know anybody with private land around Mackay that you could maybe get a foothold in there, it would be really fun to find it. And Carol, you made the comment in our working group meeting that when Stan Welch was writing about it in Utah, they had a historical location that hadn't been collected forever, but it was relocated there. And so I think you were saying that gives us hope that it could also potentially be relocated in Idaho as well. So it it may be holding on.
Right. Yeah, and it had been over 50 years when they went back and looked for it, and it was still there. So maybe it's not preferred grazing. It might be there.
Yeah. So we still have hope, which is the difference between on the NatureServe rankings. There's the state historical for those that we still have hope of finding, or versus SX would be state extirpated, meaning that its habitat's totally gone. We have no hope of finding it. This one, as with some of the others we talked about, we do have hope of finding it.
Sorry, he's a nice dog.
He's voting on this one too. Huh? Okay.
This is Lynn. I just want to say, we talked about this in the meeting on the 14th, but it would be nice if it went into the scribe notes that this species might occur at Leslie Butte, which is southeast of Mackay, not too far. It's BLM land. There's a lot of calcium in that area. It's limestone, and there's even a calcium mine nearby. So maybe it's there. I'm hopeful in some of the swales in that more moist areas within the Leslie Butte area.
Good point. This is another road trip potential. I'm always looking for road trips, and we've got a big list of good places to look, but those of you up in that area, please check it out if you get close to there. So good. Any other questions or comments?
I think you got a question from Ben.
Yeah, or a comment mostly, since I was involved in verifying the identity of the specimen here at the Rocky Mountain Herbarium. Since it is pretty highly disjunct from the rest of the species distribution, that raised some flags that it may be a label mix-up or an error on the specimen. And so we dug into the collector's original notebooks to try to resolve that question, and everything matches up perfectly in terms of the collection numbers and the locations that they were around those dates. So I think it's a valid occurrence, even though it's disjunct.
It'd be great if that could be added to the species account if it isn't already, so that question doesn't come up in the future. I'm glad you looked into that, Ben and Carol.
Yeah, thanks for going the extra mile.
Yep, great information. Okay, I think we're ready to go ahead and vote on this one. If you agree that we should add this as an S1, I'm sorry, SH to the rare plant list, go ahead and vote on that. And while people are voting, I kind of wanted to make a point too that with the consortium, both Pacific Northwest Consortium and the Intermountain Consortium, SignNet, and all the other herbaria consortia that are available now, we have so much more access to specimens, and that's really helpful. But as you've probably noticed, you can't always take what is on the specimen label at face value. And a lot of times you really need to look at those more closely. And that's where it's really helpful to have people in the herbaria and people that are knowledgeable about the taxonomy of some of these species to look at these for us. So we really appreciate people like Ben and Dawn and others that are willing to take these, the digging deeper into these species, because it's really helpful. Okay, looks like everybody who's voting supports the addition of Astragalus bodinii, however you say it. That sounds good. Okay. Looks like we are not yet out of time, so we're going to push on. And Sandy Smith is going to tell us about Townsendia scapigera. And we had prioritized species here for this particular conference on new ads in particular, because we wanted to get them added to the rare plant list and on people's radar screen. Now we're shifting a little bit. The next 3 species, if we get to all 3 of them, are actually species that we're proposing to remove from the rare plant list. So, Sandy, take it away. And Brittni, I think can you pull up her Townsendia presentation?
So Townsendia scapigera is one that we are recommending be removed from the list because we have no verified records. And we'll go through why we don't have any verified records. So next slide. So NatureServe has this as an S1 for us. We did have a type 3 in the Twin Falls district with the BLM. This is a biennial or short-lived perennial, pink to purple flowers in the Asteraceae. We have it in open sagebrush, rocky, pretty common sites. Next. So this is pictures of scapigera. None of these are taken in Idaho, but this gives you an idea of what it looks like. Next. So we have one location that is where it has been listed from before, and we'll go to the next. We're kind of on the edge of that range. So there are 2 similar species. The scapigera you see here on the left, as the name would indicate, the scape is leafless. And then a very similar looking Townsendia that is very common in southwestern Idaho is florifer. And in that case, you do have leaves on the scape as it goes up, but they're very similar in how they look otherwise. Next. So I started looking at this because there was a collection that was listed as a scapigera that was in a location where I had collected florifer for the SOS program within a quarter of a mile of the population that was listed as scapigera on that initial voucher. And that voucher actually was at College of Idaho, and Don Mansfield and I looked at it and agreed that it was actually florifer and not scapigera. The only other listing that we have for scapigera in the state is an EO that's up by Twin Falls, up in the Twin Falls area. Let's go ahead and, oh well, you can see, and this is a picture of that is listed with that EO, which there was no collection made that I could find, but there was this photograph that was taken in 2020. But if you look really closely into this, you can see, as like here, that there are leaves coming off the scape in this. And so I think this is a misidentification I have not been back to the site to know from a actual collection, but it looks to me like it's a misidentification and that it's actually Florifer rather than Scapigera. Next slide. So of the 3 collections, 2 were confirmed to be misidentified and were actually Florifer. The 1 collection, the EO looks to be Florifer. And so at this point, that would leave no confirmed specimens in Idaho. And so from that standpoint, the group discussed it and we came up with taking it off the list completely. Next slide. So we recommended removing it from the plant list and having no ranking and listing it as not in Idaho at this point. I wasn't able to get back up to the site to verify. And so if there's anybody that's been there that has more information, that would be great. But until that's verified with an actual collection or another visit, it looks like it should not be listed in the site for this species. Questions?
Hey, thank you, Sandy. Go ahead,
Sandy,
Derek.
I was wondering how close the other confirmed populations are in other states.
They're quite a ways further south into Nevada, Utah, and over into California.
So it's not real likely that this is just a margin of the
It's a pretty far disjunct outlier.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and I just wanted to mention that Sandy worked with Don Mansfield on both the Pyrrocoma and the Townsendia on all these specimens and identification too. So appreciate his help on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? So we're proposing to remove this from the Idaho Rare Plant list. And just as a note, plants that we removed from the list don't fall totally into oblivion. At our rare plant list, which is an Excel spreadsheet now, you'll notice that there's a tab of plants previously listed or considered. So it would be moved to that place. So the information is still captured on the spreadsheet of plants that we've looked at in the past. And the files, of course, are still maintained as well. So just a point of information for plants that we are removing off of the list. And so if it was to be found in, verified collection was made in the future, then we would put it back on and on we go. So if there's no further questions, we can go ahead and vote on this, on removing Pyrrocoma from the Idaho Rare Plant list. Great. Looks like we are in agreement on this one as well. Thank you very much. Okay, what time is it? It is 8. We are out of time. Okay, so we will hold on to Elysia triodon and Carex fuliginosa for the next Rare Plant Conference. But we got through a lot of plants, so this is great. I guess just a couple more logistic things before we say goodbye for the day. I'm going to let Barbara talk about her field trip this afternoon in a minute. But first, I just want to thank everybody for participating today on the Southern Idaho Rare Plant Working Group's plant presentations, and thank you for all your input and questions, and it improves our knowledge base, and that's what we're all about here. We will be coming back together at 9:30 tomorrow morning using the second of the Zoom links that Brittni sent out. And Brittni, do you want to make any other logistical comments?
I don't have anything off the top of my head here. If anybody has any comments about ways that I could run a Zoom meeting better, please let me know, because this is my first time running a conference. I'm happy to take suggestions. I do have a plan to meet with Karen Colson after this to stay on and go through her presentation. So y'all are welcome to stay on and chat, but we'll be going through that immediately after this. And Derek has his hand up. So what have you got?
I was just, Beth just mentioned that there's a second link that we need for tomorrow's meeting.
There is, yeah. So that
I'll have to go find that one then. So don't join today's meeting again.
Yeah. So the email that I sent out has 2 links in it. It should be a bold date.
Okay.
Differentiating them.
All right. Thanks.
Yep.
Great. Any other questions before Barbara talks to us about her field trip today? No. Okay, Barbara, go ahead.
Okay. So if you hadn't noticed what I put in the chat yet, we will not have Outdoor Idaho along. This will just be us today. But this shows the junction, the screen share. You can see the screen share okay? Anybody there? Oops.
Yeah,
I see it.
You can see it.
Okay.
Thanks, Barbara.
Okay, just checking. So basically it's the junction of Pierce Park Lane where it comes up from Hill Road. Cartwright Road comes this way from Bogus Basin, and then it heads on up to Hidden Springs that way. But there's parking right along the roadside here. And then we'll cross over the road, pick up this trail that drops down through a nice sandy bowl, lots of Allium ossei through here, follow on up the ridge beyond here, where there's buttercup in bloom on the ridge, and maybe even some Antonaria dimorpha, and keep an eye out for lithospermum as well. So that's where we're going. It's not more than less than a mile probably to get to the buttercups, and how much time we spend is up to us. So any questions?
So Barbara, time that you're planning to take off from there?
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
So that gives people time to close up shop, have lunch, and hopefully get to this site. And for those, if you show up late, this is the way we're going to go find us. It's a marked trail that Treasure Valley Land Trust has developed or got the easement from the landowners with. So it's not on the Ridge to Rivers Trail system map that I have. Okay.
I'd like to interrupt and offer a thanks to the organizers. This was really well done. Thank you, Brittni and Kristen and Beth and others who presented. Really good job.
Yes. Thank you very much for Brittni and Kristen for doing this. And I think you've done a great job keeping us on track and keeping us going. So I do appreciate that very much. And we appreciate everybody and hope to see all of you back here tomorrow. So have a nice afternoon. Thanks.
Same time, different lane.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
We can probably stop the recording.
I did, and it's now saying, where do I want to save it?
It should Yeah, just save it on your desktop and then we can email it out to folks or put it on the Dropbox for folks. If you can. How's it going, Karen?
Good, how are you?
Oh, not too bad. Turn on my video now. I don't have to be afraid anymore.
I turned mine on. Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Oh, that's so funny. I couldn't see myself. So I was like, oh, I don't think it's working. So I'm probably just staring blankly at you.
Oh, you're good.
Well, thanks so much for staying on. Like I said, we use Teams and I've done Zoom meetings, but I haven't presented. And since I didn't get you my presentation yet, I thought it'd be good if I practiced. But I am planning on emailing it to you tonight so that you do have it.
Yeah, that works. And I'll just save it. And if you have any issues, I can pull it up for you and kind of run through it like I was doing everybody else's. So.
Okay. So this is a little different though, because I can't see myself. Do you see yourself when you're talking?
I've got a grid of everybody.
Including you. Huh. Okay.
Including me. So what do you see?
I just see you. I have the grids above of other folks. I just don't have myself, which is fine. But
if you go up into the right corner, there's a thing that says view, and I think you can adjust it there.
Yeah, it just popped up. Maybe there was just a lag.
Okay.
I'm usually at home, but my electric went out, so I had to rush to the office.
No.
So I'm in my office. So this looks pretty straightforward. So I'm just gonna go ahead, and it just has the screen share button. So I'm assuming if I just push that, it'll pop up my presentation, but I'll go ahead and try it out here. Oh, it comes up with a lot of stuff here. Okay.
Yeah, and so I've found, just make sure you know what screen your presentation's on and have that be like the only thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, because I don't, okay, maybe those are the other things I don't. Okay, so so you're seeing that, and then I just put it in, I guess, presentation mode here, or slideshow mode. Okay, so now you're just seeing that. Let me just click through it a little bit and make sure it's all working. Okay, and it's, hi Beth. And I can see some people. That's nice, because I hate not seeing anybody, because then I just feel like I'm talking to myself. It's really weird. Okay, so this looks like it's gonna work. So yeah, so thank you so much. Like I said, I'll send this to you tonight, so you have it. Hopefully I can do it, because I have like some of these things where I click through stuff.
Yeah, no worries. And so then one of the other things that I found today while I was presenting is, I think you can scroll down, and if you have two screens, you can hit the chat and it will pop up in your other screen. So if folks are asking questions while you're presenting, you could see those pop up.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I don't have two screens, so I won't be able to see if people have questions. So I guess maybe I'll just wait till the end, unless you see something that you want me to address, you can interrupt me.
Okay, yeah, perfect. So Kristen's been monitoring the chat and letting me know when there's been questions, so I can jump in. We're trying to use only one microphone since we're in the same room and have a bunch of echo. So
okay. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing and make sure that works. Okay. That's great. And so just since Beth is on too, I was just gonna go through a little bit kind of background about the recovery planning process, because as I give species updates, I kind of mention things. I just want people, especially new folks, to understand what I'm talking about.
Sure.
And then I'm just going to give super quick updates, because I don't have a lot of time, of each of the Fish and Wildlife Service trust species. And that's pretty much it. I'm hoping I can fit it in time. I'm really making it super condensed.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, just
that
try to
kind of
keep it within 20 minutes, and that's great. That's just what we wanted. So thank you.
Okay, perfect.
I'm glad you
I
took the time to do this.
Oh, no problem. I am so sorry. I've had so many presentations lately. I'm just like really trying to keep up with them all. So I apologize that I am, I haven't gotten this to you yet, but I will be ready.
I have no doubt that you are, so that's good.
Okay.
I'm glad you could run through it, do this now, because I'm sure it makes you feel better. So yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. I appreciate it. And thanks for all you guys are doing. This was great today.
Good. Well, I'm so glad you could with us, join us.
Yep, yep, I was here.